Ask any veteran what they miss about the military and watch what happens. They won't say the pay, they won't say the haircuts, they won't say the 4 a.m. formations or the field ops or the chow hall. But somewhere in the conversation, something shifts. Their eyes go somewhere else and they'll start telling you about the worst weeks of their life as if it's the best thing that ever happened to them. That's not nostalgia, that's not selective memory, that's not them being broken, that's not brainwashing. There's something deeper going on. And once you understand it, you'll understand why so many veterans struggle to feel alive in civilian life after the military. And this video is about that. Veterans don't necessarily miss being miserable. They miss who they were. They miss who they were with. And they miss what life meant when they were miserable. That's the whole video. Everything else I'm going to say is just proof. The suffering created instant brotherhood. Here's something that nobody tells you when you join. The worst moments in your life bond people the fastest. It's legitimately called trauma bonding in some circles. Field ops in the rain, no sleep for 3 days, frozen MREs, stupid orders from somebody who has no idea what they're doing, getting smoked for something you didn't even do, deployment boredom so heavy that it bends time, shared misery that nobody outside of that moment will ever fully understand. In the moment, it all sucked. You hated it. You complained about it, and you counted down the days until you'd never have to do it again. And then years later, you find yourself at a barbecue trying to explain it to somebody, and you realize that they're never going to get it. Not because they're not smart, not because they don't care, but because they weren't there. That bond that you built in that suffering is something that civilian life never recreates. Office friendships don't compare. Gym buddies don't compare. Even most family relationships will never compare, because none of those people were in the foxhole with you, whether that's literal or otherwise. You don't miss the pain. You miss the people who were in it with you. Life was brutally simple. Military life was hard, but it was clear. You knew where to be, you knew what to wear, you knew who was in charge, and you knew the mission. You knew what mattered that day, and you knew what would happen if you didn't do your job, and you knew what would happen if you did. Civilian life is the opposite. More freedom, less structure, more options, less direction, more choices about what to wear, where to go, who to listen to, what to care about, what to build your life around. And here's the part nobody warned you about. That freedom can feel weirdly empty. You wake up on a Tuesday and nobody's telling you where to be. Nobody's telling you what to wear. Nobody's telling you that today has a point. Nobody's gonna miss you if you don't show up. You're free to do whatever you want, and somehow that feels worse than being told exactly what to do. The military gave you less freedom, but a lot more certainty, whereas civilian life gives you a lot more freedom, but less direction. And a lot of vets miss the certainty more than they realize. The worst parts made you feel useful. Even when it sucked, you were a part of something. You had a role, you had a team, you had a mission, you had people depending on you. You woke up every morning like there was a reason that your body needed to get out of bed, even if you didn't want to. And that feeling is probably the most underrated thing that the military gives you. We call it purpose. And in civilian life, a lot of veterans struggle because no one's yelling. Nobody's assigning meaning. Nobody's telling them where they fit in. The structure that used to hold your identity in place is just gone. And what fills that space for a lot of guys is slow, quiet drift. You're not lazy, you're not weak, and you're not failing. You just spent years inside of a system that handed you purpose. And now you have to figure out how to manufacture from scratch every single day of your life. Nobody trained you for that. You don't miss the chaos, you miss mattering inside of the chaos. You don't miss the circus, you miss the clowns. Misery became proof you were strong. This is the deepest part of the video, so pay attention here. The military teaches you to take pride in surviving things that normal people would never tolerate. 8 hours in the rain with wet socks and a 60-pound ruck, sleeping in places that aren't even fit for animals, eating things that barely qualify as food, pulling 24-hour shifts on minimal to no sleep, standing perfectly still while somebody 6 inches from your face explains what a perfectly useless human being you are. And you did all of that. You survived it. You laughed about it. You outsuffered the guy next to you, and he outsuffered you back, and that became the game. And over time, that becomes a part of your identity. Bad conditions become stories. Pain becomes status. And the suck becomes proof. Hence the phrase, embrace the suck. Proof that you're not soft. Proof that you can handle things others can't. Proof that there's a version of you that nothing can touch. And then you get out. And nobody's testing you anymore. Nobody's asking you to prove anything. The conditions of normal life are comfortable in a way that almost feels insulting. And slowly that hardened version of you begins to fade. You get softer. That's what the deepest part of the missing actually is. Veterans miss the version of themselves that could handle anything you threw at it. The worst memories become the best stories. Nobody sits around at a reunion talking about the comfortable days. Nobody says, remember that Tuesday in Garrison where nothing happened and we went home on time at 4? What they remember is the dumbest field op anyone ever ran. The barracks inspection that made grown men cry. We called it Chinese field day when I was in, where you would have to move all the furniture out of a room clean, move all the furniture back in. The coldest night anyone ever spent outside. The insane staff sergeant who became a legend by accident. The worst chow anyone ever choked down. The most ridiculous order anyone ever followed. The moment everyone almost lost it in formation and yet somehow held it together. Or maybe the moment where formation broke into a full-out brawl. I had that happen in Fuji. Those stories don't survive because they were fun. They survive because they were shared. The bad moments become the glue. They become the language. They become the inside jokes that you'll reminisce about 20 years later when you run into somebody you served with at the airport. The military was miserable in real time, but it became legendary in memory. That's why you can't shut up about it at family dinners, even though you swore you'd never bring it up again. Why the missing hits so hard? So why do veterans miss the worst parts? It's not because the military was perfect. It wasn't. Most of it genuinely did suck, and anyone who tells you otherwise is either lying or hasn't thought about it hard enough. Veterans miss it because those moments gave them 5 things that civilian life never gives back at the same intensity: brotherhood, structure, purpose, identity, and the kind of stories that bond people for life. When the missing hits, you're not crazy. You're not stuck in the past. You're not failing to move on. You're probably just missing a life where the pain had a meaning to it. And the work now isn't to go back. You can't. That door is closed. Ooh. Man, that hits. The work is to build a civilian life that gives you those 5 things again. A tribe that has your back. A structure you actually respect. A mission that's worth your mornings. An identity that you're proud of. And one day, stories worth telling. That's the part that nobody trains you for, but that's the part that matters most.